I want to thank Senator Michael Nicholas for agreeing to conduct this joint oversight hearing between the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication and the Committee on Finance and Taxation, General Governmental Operations and Youth Development. The notice of this oversight hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets by electronic format on January the 15th, 2016, with a second notice provided on the 23rd of January. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. As I have a whole series of questions, but so I'll save an opening statement, but I'll allow the chairman of finance to no opening. Okay, great. First, I want to thank the administration for showing up. I know that all three of you were sent invitations, and I know there was an attempt to try to get this thing postponed, but I really felt that it was important that we meet today, because I know by this time next week you would have transmitted the executive budget. And I wanted to address a couple of things. At the onset, one, I'm disappointed, let me leave it at that we couldn't get the documents that we had asked for. We wanted to know, in November, in one of his rare appearances at the legislature, the governor testified that, testified that there was going to be a budget surplus. I think some of you were here at that hearing. He said maybe not a big surplus, but a surplus nonetheless. So that was the reason why the documents that I had requested from all of you to at least preliminarily provide to us whatever documents you provided the governor in November that allowed him to make that comment. Any of you want to address it? What was, in your response to us today, you stated that it's still too preliminary and that there are outstanding departments that haven't turned in documents. So somebody get a microphone and explain to me what it was the governor was or had been referring to for him to have publicly stated in November that he could say that there was a budget surplus. Is that correct? Actually, any and all of you, if all of you would speak to it in turn. Or wait, I just realized something I forgot. Can we just swear them in, because this is going to be money? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Can any of you provide this committee any insight about any information that may have been provided to the governor in mid-November that showed that we were going to have a budget surplus? Any of you? We'll put it on the record so that at least I have that, because I was trying to figure out where that was coming from too. But just turn on the microphones and go ahead and state to the record. Ms. Kiki, look, I'll start with you as the acting director of administration. with all of the entries that are being made at this point, can the Department of Administration at this point say whether or not we've ended 2015 with a surplus or a deficit or?
Okay. At this point, like I mentioned earlier, or I mentioned on the response to this body, the accounting rules require us to include certain agencies to be included in our general fund. As such, we had since then requested the different agencies such as DOE, the Guam Legislature, Public Defender, and OPA to submit financials. We have received so far financials from Public Defender and OPA. So we still have yet the large agency, Department of Education. Until then, we will have some preliminary numbers, but even at that, every year the Lord would do their audit on the tax liability. So depending on what the findings are, that can really sway the bottom line. And right now we had just provided the trial balances for the audit, so they have not even started the field work and started looking at our numbers. So it is preliminary and I can't give anything right now.
Would you have any idea as to where the governor might have, what information the governor might have had that would have said, could have said that there was going to be a budget surplus?
Currently, my understanding is if there is a difference between budgetary accounting and financial accounting, so and depending on what type of receipt it is, it may be recorded as a revenue and budgetary purposes, but for accounting purposes, it's not. So what he's referring to is the monthly expenditure reports that is provided by BBMR, as well as DOA and DRT. If you review the report as of September 30, you're looking at what was appropriated based on the budget law, and then you compare that to what was actually expended. So I believe he's referring to budgetary controls.
Okay. When we had our last oversight hearing in November, you had just issued the CRER for the month of September. And we had asked for, Joey, we had asked you to give us a revised CRER for September, taking into account the entire fiscal year, because at least then we could do as Ms. Key is stating, look at that to see what our financial condition was at the end of last year. Have you provided that revised CRER for the month of September to the committee?
No, I have not. And Ms. Kikigi and I have had discussions on this particular matter as it relates to the September financials. So she had just explained about the things are still happening, basically. Transactions are still being made, and she's going through that process. So we have an understanding that once those figures are firmed up, that she would share it with me, and then we would proceed with preparing the CRER as amended. Because I know that on that last oversight, I did mention that there will be adjustments forthcoming, and so until such time those numbers are hardened, I'm unable really to give you a revised CRER for September. But DOA we're already in discussions to accomplish that particular request that you had made. And that's the reason why I wasn't able to provide it last week.
Okay. Needless to say, I'm more than disappointed that you have not been able to comply with the committee's request from the last hearing to provide us. I mean, I compliment all of you for getting the CRERs out on a timely basis every month, and but we were hoping to at least see FY15 closed in the CRER with a revised September reading, and so we can't, obviously. But what we can do is look at the CRERs that you have provided, okay? And all of you have copies of your most recent one, the December one that you just submitted last Friday, last Thursday?
Right, last week, yes.
And I want to point out to everyone, one of the bones of contention that I've been suffering for the last 6 months, August, September, October, November, December, January, yes, 6 months. I have had to suffer a barrage of press releases and allegations that because the Guam legislature passed a fiscally conservative budget with a revised revenue projection, that I somehow denied the administration the ability to utilize an additional $20 million in business privilege tax. You guys are aware of that constant public statement? Mr. Calvo?
Yes, sir, yes.
And what in the CRER that you just issued for December 2015, you also provide a projection of what you think the year at this full 2016 is going to be, right?
That's the revenue tracking?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you just like the mic closer?
Yes, in the CRER report, we do reflect a revenue tracking listing or by categories.
Would you please read to the committee what the revenue tracking is for the business privilege tax for the end of this fiscal year? What you're tracking it to be or projecting to close this fiscal year out at?
That'll be 235 million.
So the three of you in this CRER that all three of you have signed off on are projecting that by the end of this fiscal year, BPT, the gross receipts tax, is on track to collect $235 million, correct?
Yes, that's correct, per our CRER that we reported out. When we look at the amounts, October was quite high, low at 221 million, and then when we reported in November, it almost stayed the same. But then in December, we show a little bump up of 235 million. So it seemed like there's that movement towards expecting higher GRT, BPT. And we're in the first quarter. It's kind of like a struggle, but first quarter historically shows that it's a low quarter, and it's followed by a not almost similar amount or percentage in the second quarter, but then the third quarter, April taxes and so forth, it really begins to to climb.
On some of the individual and corporate and withholding, I'll grant you that. But for the BPT,
Yeah, that's what we're showing here in our tracking. Again, it's moving in that direction. And again, we're closely monitoring it. It's just, a first quarter of 4 quarters. But that's how we've looked at it in the past as well. The figures, I have data that goes back to 2006 that would show that the first quarter is kind of like a challenging quarter, almost the lowest of the fiscal year, and then it just starts to climb. But then on the third quarter, it really just exponentially increases. So that's what we are. That's all part of, our function of doing the revenue tracking.
and this is going to be one of the few times that you'll hear me actually compliment. But actually, I looked at all the CRERs that your departments have issued over the last 15 months. And for at least for the last year, you have been absolutely on target. On target. Bullseye, as the governor is fond of saying. The 235 that you're projecting today, what's the legislature's projection?
It's 247.7. That's the adopted gross revenue for the
That's
budget
the
act.
adopted.
Yeah. That was part of the 33-66.
And
So we're like $12 million.
Do you know how the
off.
legislature arrived at that number?
No, sir.
When we received, well, let me ask this next question. What was the governor's budget projection for BPT for 2016? That should be burned in all of our minds because it's been repeated several times that I didn't give him his 268.
I think it's 260.
No,
For BPT?
268. It was 260 the previous fiscal year, but 268 in this last budget
I'm sorry.
request.
Sorry. Yeah, I stand corrected. You're right.
So the governor
265. Sorry.
in the budget that you guys submitted last January projected $268 million for business privilege tax. When the legislature reduced it by 20 million, he sent a letter to us stating that there was a possibility of layoffs because I didn't give him the 268. But today, after the first quarter, your projection for this fiscal year is 235.
At this particular point in time, Vice Speaker, a snapshot of the financials.
Okay.
And again, I was saying that the first quarter is probably the lowest quarter during the fiscal year, and it's going to pick up.
Okay.
So I
Look
really
at-
cannot conclude all that it's going to end that way per se, but that's the tracking.
When the governor submitted his budget last year on January the 31st, stating that he projected $268 million for business privilege tax. What did your CRER state was the December projection at the time? On January the 20th, 2015, what did you guys project was what was tracking for the fiscal year? Do you want to put it up?
December?
Yes, December 2014.
238?
238 or 228?
I mean, sorry, 228.
228.
That's right.
When on January the 20th of 2015, when BBMR, DOA, and Rev and Tax signed a CRER that projected the tracking for BPT to get to 228, how did the executive budget request 11 days later somehow read that we should anticipate 268?
When we projected our revenues for FY 2016, of course, it comprises of all these categories, tax and otherwise.
Yes, I understand. But
Right,
just for that one category.
No, but I'm saying-
let's stick
but
to that one
can I
category. I know you're going to try to get to the bottom line. I'm just trying to stick to one line first.
But
right
all
now.
yes, okay, we're sticking to the line, but the whole, as far as projecting out, it's a whole, it considers historical data and information, but also we're trying to anticipate what's going to happen a year or so out. That
Okay.
takes on its different, it's a
Thank you very
complicated
much, Mr.
possibility.
Calvo. Now, I know you keep trying to claim that you guys can't project, but please read to me what you finally closed 2015 at. What was the final
CRER,
number?
you mean? On the CRER?
Yes, your CRER for September, dated October the 15th, October the 20th. What was the final collection?
On the CRER for October?
Your
That is
final
September.
actual collections for the year.
That's 226. Or 229 maybe.
Well,
229.
226, 229.
Right.
Your projection
It's
in January was actually bullseye again, right?
Okay.
So don't downplay yourself. You guys have done an excellent job in projecting business privilege tax.
And that's where we have that disconnect, is because we factored in all that we could, all the data that we have to arrive at our projection, and we have some challenges, Vice Speaker.
No, I don't think you have any challenges, because in January of 2015, you said the tracking was 228.
Right, the tracking, but then we are projecting
And what was
for the
what was the
following year.
actual? The actual was 227.
Okay.
Can you think of
Yes.
getting much closer than that? It's nowhere near the 268 that was placed into the executive budget. It's not even close to the 247 that we took it down to. And the reason why we did that was we took the projection of 228, as you had put it, and we looked at the governor's executive budget, and when he said 268, we understood, though Senator Nicholas asked at least 5 times in the hearings that we had in July and June for the formula by which you arrive at any of these numbers. And all we could see was that 268 and 247 was the projection, what was the adopted for that year. And we saw an 8% increase. So we blindly gave you the credit of the doubt, used an 8% increase on the 228, and that's how we got to the 247. So
in the CRERs that I have submitted so far, 3 months, we're still tracking positively over the adopted levels of the Budget Act 33.
Oh, yes, I figured you were probably celebrating over the weekend when PNC decided to run a story that you were $200,000 off adopted revenue.
So it's good to stay on the positive side, and that's what we've been doing.
I understand. It's good to stay on the positive side.
Right.
But that adopted revenue, whose adopted revenue was that? Was that the executive budget adopted revenue? Or was that the adopted revenue that this legislature, being fiscally conservative and realistic, taking out $20 million from the governor's projection of 268?
The legislature, sir. That's
Thank you.
OFB and you. Thank you.
Well, no, it's my colleagues, because I could make that determination, but if they didn't want to buy it with me and they didn't stand behind me, I would not have been able to get that. So I thank them for having faith that we were trying as much as possible to be fiscally conservative and realistic. And even then, we believed that, wrongfully, that the growth rate for BPT was going to be 8%.
That's right. That was your initiative, and that's the number. But can I just ask something to Vice Speaker, because I know we're honing in on that BPT, but there are other categories also that I think needs to be mentioned.
I'll get to all of those, but I'm just trying to get to one point, Mr. Calvo.
Yes, sir.
Governor Calvo has consistently stated that the legislature denied him the ability to spend that additional $20 million because we wrongfully reduced it, when actually we should have been down where you're at. We really should have adopted a revenue that was 235 or 237, but not 247.
I just want to say again, Vice Speaker, we're in the first quarter. We still have quite a ways to go.
You have quite a ways to go, and I'm just trying to point out.
There's a huge gap.
Historically, how big a mistake did you make last year? Between January and October, how big a mistake did you make? In January, you predicted tracking was going to get to 228. In October, you ended the fiscal year at 227. You should have gotten a bonus for being bullseye.
Thank you, but on the same note, if it goes the other way, it's money out of my pocket.
I understand, and that's what I'm trying to. But so don't, demean the efforts of all those people behind you. They
we
work
have a great
very
staff.
hard.
Yeah, absolutely, they're here, and I guess I'll thank them.
I want to publicly
for
thank them for being as forthright as possible, and showing us that if we would just stop and look at your CRERs, we could probably do a lot better. It reminds me of the movie I saw recently, Spotlight, where the newspaper people were going, "You never told us," and then They're saying, we've told you, I don't know how many times. And if I had just looked at every single month that the CRER was coming out, that was put out dutifully and diligently by that brilliant staff behind you, I would have seen that there was no way that we could have gotten to 247, much less 268.
We thank you, Senator. But again, on the forecasting for 16, there are many components that goes into that process, and many, offices that partakes. There's a big committee, and that's the number that we generated from that working group, and it wasn't. We used basically the same that we've done in the past, and why it didn't pan out, or it hasn't panned out yet. We're still, discussing that. It's in progress. But again, we still have three quarters to go to figure it out.
Now, I think what the disconnect is that we here at the legislature and the rest of Adelup ought to stop and listen to you and your staff. You predicted and tracked 228. We should have all bought the 228 because you were almost on target. It was 226 point something 966. But it was just off by a tiny, tiny bit. And so we should have just stuck with that.
I'd like to make an amendment to that comment and that accolade that you're making. I think we have to extend it back to you because of, again, the stuff that you had just mentioned. You're on target. We kind of missed the target at this particular point in time. So I think collaboratively, if we can work together, that'd be fantastic, because then we would be able to nail this down sooner than later.
And without
Thank you, Speaker.
Divulging any confidences, I would have loved to have asked who dreamt up the 268, but I won't.
But it's not a dream.
Well,
it was as good as it was at the time that it was projected. So it's not a dream.
But it was nowhere near possible, because you're showing in your own projections this year, and you're tracking that it's not going to get there. Okay.
But all due respect,
and the
Senator,
thing is that somehow your side of Adelup has got to notify the other side of Adelup that stop dreaming of the 268. It ain't happening. And quit trying to force the legislature to try to think about a supplemental. We heard a bill this morning by Senator Nicholas to use all this excess that we think, people are thinking are going to have and have a supplemental budget for other kinds of things, and he wants to tie it down to one area. Senator Rodriguez took off a bill that he wanted to have it go to GMH. Please stop the discussion of a supplemental budget, because...
I'm sorry, you said stop discussion. I kind of lost you there. You're implying that...
Well...
that we are
pursuing
that.
Has been talking about having a supplemental budget.
Adelup, as in which office, sir? I am not aware of a supplemental being contemplated at this particular point in time. So I have to say that I am not aware.
That has probably been the best news that we've heard today.
Okay, but
because that was the one thing, the reason why I wanted this hearing, because since August there has been talk about a supplemental. I don't know what newspapers you're reading or why you're not reading the press releases coming out from the other side of Adelup, but the other side of Adelup is saying that they want us to consider a supplemental to give him the authority to spend this additional money that we took out.
Right, and the last oversight, Vice Speaker, that you had me here for, I did mention for the record that I was not aware of a supplemental at that particular time, that I had no discussions with the governor about a supplemental. Okay. I mentioned that for the record the last time also. So.
Okay, well, I'm very happy to hear that. And the only other reassurance I want today is, can we get a realistic BPT projection in the executive budget that comes out next week?
We're working very diligently and hard on getting those numbers in, and we're working on that, Vice Speaker.
Because can we just show slide 7 out of turn? I'm not exactly proud of this. This is business privilege tax over the last several fiscal years. Even the legislature has made mistakes. In 15, though we reduced the executive budget request that was 258 to 247, we were off by 20. When we adopted the 247, we didn't think it was that unreasonable, because you see that when we ended 2014, we had 230, actual was 238. So that little increase wasn't that bad, or at least it didn't seem that bad. But what many of us neglected to take into account was 2014 was a banner year, and it was a banner year because that was the year after all the tax refunds had been issued in a timely fashion, and consequently there was lots of buy-in out in the community. And so that's why we had the banner year, and we weren't going to get that same thing happening in 15. And though we made a very small increase, it was still $20 million short. I mean, from the actual. Thankfully, we didn't adopt the executive budget request of 258. And then this last fiscal year, we didn't adopt the governor's 267. We instead kept the same amount that we had projected in 2015. And according to your CRER, even that's going to be off by 12 million. We all have to be a little more realistic about this. Okay, so please, I know that you're only part of the fiscal team, and only part of the fiscal team that's going to make the decision on what the revenue projection is going to be, but try to get them to at least realistically look at what the real numbers are. And while we're talking about revenue projections in the executive budget, and be careful what you wish for, why don't we go to slide 5? All right. Up on the board, you'll find there that I've listed what the executive budget request was for every category. And then I've taken your most recent CRER and I've listed it there. And I've shown the variance between what the governor had asked for and what the legislature finally, well, no, actually, the CRER is your own tracking. No, just if we had given you everything that you had said, and if you were, as your CRER is showing today, with all those losses, with all that variance, the difference between what the governor asked for in his budget request, what you're currently tracking, what the difference is between the governor's request and your current tracking for the year, what you figure it was going to end up at, we would be $26 million short.
While we're talking about BPT, Mr. Vice Speaker, part of this BPT and the projections, we've been realizing a lot of receivables on BPT since FY14 and especially FY15 that basically I would say that some of the taxpayers are not paying up front. So we're doing a lot of aggressive collection on that part, not only BPT but also withholding individual and corporate taxes. So right now you requested a current collection on receivables, and we noticed that for the last few fiscal years the BPT has gone up. I mean, right now it's at $68 million, and we have a lot of projected that we want to collect, but it takes the process takes time to collect these things. So in other words, we could collect a few million, 5 million, 10 million anytime moving forward.
Okay, how much did you collect last year in the receivables?
Last year
BPT.
we in BPT, I don't have the breakdown, but basically, okay, I do. Hold on. On FY15, we collected a total of about maybe 2.1, 2.2 million on BPT.
Of what amount of receivables?
On receivables of total receivables before that was around 73 million, I believe.
So out of 73 million, you were able to collect 2 million. What's that percentage? I understand you're and I'm commending Reverend Tax for its collections. I mean, that 2 million is great, but is it going to make up that $40 million difference?
What I'm trying to say is that in time we have big cases that are coming up. We need to work on them. We need to go out and collect, and that's our aggressive tax collection project that we have. We identified a lot of the receivables that are 100,000 and above, and we're going after those receivables. So right now we have $20 million receivables that are we're looking at, and this is something that we're looking at and see what we can do to collect in the near future. So those are the things that we're looking at, and probably the collection efforts that have been coming down since especially FY15. When you look at FY15, I think I was down by 20 million, something. But we've seen the receivables grow at that time also. So that's the thing that we're really going after right now is try to collect, on these receivables, and maybe that's the picture that we're not seeing right here is people are filing and not really paying, and we just have to go after them and actually enforce collection.
Okay, well, I wish you well in that, and I commend you for the 2 million you collected last year. I'm hoping that it'll be more this year, but the thing is that it's not going to make up the difference between what was anticipated in the request and what was actually collected. I mean, that's not, the 33 million isn't going to be made up that way. And these are your numbers, not my numbers, okay? So the other thing is that just looking at that, Kathy, with a negative 3%, 3.11 variance, does that cause you to think of anything that you guys should be doing?
Well, yeah, of course, every time. Well, yeah, that's always been my concern since we do have our obligations for general fund. And especially since DOA has oversight over certain agencies' budgets, my challenge has always been them wanting 100% of their appropriations. But I internally want to impose a 3% because, of course, if you appropriate 100 million for the year and we only receive 97 million, someone's not going to get paid. So yes, this is a concern for me right now, especially since I'm getting a lot of grunt from those agencies that we have oversight. They're demanding that I pay them 100%. So,
I mean, I understand your dilemma because I have been accused of depriving GPD of cars. I've been accused of everything by all the different agencies because I reduced the governor's, I got the legislature to reduce the governor's budget by the $20 million that we took out on BPT.
okay.
Yeah, I was not happy about doing that. But the three of you have been in government for a long time. Having a 3% variance at the end of the quarter, what does that invoke?
I know that John Camacho and the fiscal team has been meeting regularly because we know that we need to at least meet our projections. So I know John Camacho has recently hired some temporary staff to beef up the collections. So that's what I believe he's talking about, although these
okay,
are...
what I'm trying to get at, Ms. Kikiki, is are you familiar with Section 4109F of the Government Code, Chapter 4, Title 5? Would you run 6? Would one of you read that publicly? Yeah, read it.
Oh, that's a long paragraph. Fiscal alignment plan, 30 days after the close of each quarter of the fiscal year. The directors of the Department of Administration, Department of Revenue Taxation, and Bureau of Budget and Management Research shall determine whether actual revenues collected for that quarter are consistent with the projected revenues for the fiscal year. If said directors determine that projected fiscal year revenues based on actual revenues collected are 3% or more less than revenue projections adopted by the Annual Budget Act, Imagalahi and Guahan should submit to the Speaker of the Legislature in Guahan a fiscal alignment plan that shall address the revenue disparity. Said plan may include, but is not limited to, cost containment and austerity measures, governmental reorganization plans, and other such actions. Imagalahi shall submit to the Speaker of the Legislature in Guahan proposed legislation in a bill format to implement the fiscal alignment plan. if legislative action is required.
So if this legislature had given the governor what he had projected or asked for in his executive budget request, and now that we've ended the first quarter, and you have seen that the projections for the year are going to be more than 3% off, would you not have to be doing this fiscal realignment plan right now had we not reduced the budget? I mean, the anticipated revenue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, Speaker.
I want to make that clear to the public. Is that
Yes, we would have to come up with a fiscal alignment plan. Yes, sir.
and you're currently not having to write a fiscal realignment plan because the legislature reduced the anticipated revenue projections of the governor
Yes.
to something closer to more realistic, even if it is more aggressive than what you're showing.
Yes, that's correct.
We may be under currently, but it's not 3%, thank God.
Yes, sir.
I hope everybody understands the import of that is that the fact that we reduced the anticipated revenue, and in light of the actuals, I mean the tracking, we have been spared having to write a realignment plan. And I actually think that we may need to be writing a realignment plan because I'm still not sure about some of the numbers that you're giving me as it relates to the some of the other taxes. I noted a difference in the November and the December CRER for a couple of entries. In the November one, I don't know. Can you run the November CRER? Okay. Oh. In the November one, you have your own in front of you. If memory serves me right, in the corporate taxes, we were short in withholding, but for some reason, you guys figured an increase in projections for, or at least your tracking somehow jumped $12 and $20 million in each one of those. Admittedly, in the December one, there may have been increased collections, but I'm a little leery when collections in 15 were less than in 14, but somehow you're projecting that you're going to have more, that you're going to be able to collect more. I mean 16 than in 15. Anyway. Senator Mike? No, go ahead. I need to find out where I'm at.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to interject with a few comments at this point. I know, Joe, you're talking about how the bottom line of the overall budget is something that we should always be referring back to. And that is correct to a point. But one of the things that we always need to be mindful of, especially in light of the situation up at the hospital, is that while the bottom line does provide a greater reflection of the overall state of the government's finances, the funding for specific agencies gets taken off of the top a lot of the time. And so with respect to the business privilege tax, for example, 4% of that goes directly into the pharmaceutical fund, which goes to support the Guam Memorial Hospital. So when we're short on BPT, even if it may be made up for in income taxes or corporate taxes, those other tax areas don't flow into the pharmaceutical fund. The pharmaceutical fund is still short. So I think that's why it's important for us to get a firm handle on our BPT tracking. And then that also speaks, John, to the outstanding receivables in the BPT, because you mentioned 70 million still outstanding in business privilege tax, and 4% of that is another 2.8 million that's supposed to go into the pharmaceutical fund. So, you know, when I look at these things and I think about the real challenges facing our community today, particularly the main headlines of GMH, you know, we can really, if we really connect the dots back to where the flow of funds is supposed to come from, it comes from an overprojection of BPT that doesn't materialize, and then it comes from the inability to collect BPT that further drains out the catch resources. And so what happens is the hospital assumes it's going to get X, which is the revenue projection. The projections come short, so they have to discount for Y, and then the collections of those projections come up even shorter, so they got to discount even further. And so what happens is the hospital ends up accruing all these liabilities. The cash never comes in to meet it, you know. And then the hospital, and then we turn around and we try to help the hospital in so many other ways. But we need to be mindful of these things, and we need advisement from the group. So, for example, perhaps the age of special funds must be reconsidered. I mean, these special funds were created to try and help these agencies, but I just keep looking at them and I keep thinking to myself, it's just causing pain. If they were funded from the general fund, then we can say that you need to prioritize. But because they're funded from these special funds, and these special funds are coming up short, you know, then everybody just kind of throws their hands up in the air, right? But we see it regularly in the pharmaceutical fund with these BPT issues. We've seen it regularly over the years in the territorial educational facilities fund with education. So, you know, when we have these conversations about revenues and collections, even though the bottom line may reflect something different as far as the big picture is concerned, the little pictures that are getting impacted on the top line, they're what's causing these major crisis points in our government. And so we need to come together, and we need to figure out how we're going to eventually move ourselves past that. I just wanted to kind of make that point as I'm listening in, because these figures in the BPT, they are dramatically off, and they are in turn causing all these different flow-throughs to have an impact. The other thing too that we haven't discussed, and I know that's not on the agenda, but this is also affecting the hospital situation, are the tax credits, you know, that are claimed against the alcohol and tobacco taxes that are supposed to go into the Healthy Futures Fund. So when we have all these little things nicking away, it's no wonder we have some of the crises manifesting that we do. Even though we appropriate and we project in the beginning, it just doesn't materialize in the end, and we're already seeing it in the first quarter of this fiscal year. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that, Mr. Chairman, at this point in the conversation. Thank you.
As long as you brought up the hospital and Healthy Futures Fund, let me get to those. Can you put up slide 13? Last week, when we were discussing Bill 199, BBMR submitted a fiscal note stating that there was some $23 million in the Healthy Futures Fund And in the fiscal note, it shows there's 16 million that has been appropriated. And it's right there. I mean, it might have been a different day from the day that you guys did your fiscal note. But at the very bottom of that screenshot, it shows that the amount appropriated was 16.207, all right? Or $16,207,000. And the collection was actually something in 24 million. The fiscal note that we got last week said that there was 23, and it acknowledged that there was 16 million in appropriations, but then it ended with the fiscal note saying that there's only available $1.8 million. Do you have your health person here to assist you in that one, Mr. Calvo, about trying to figure out how when you acknowledge that the only appropriation is 16 million and that you had $23 million in there, what happened to the rest of the cash?
But when we did the fiscal note, we called on staff, both BBMR and DOA, to collaborate on it and to do the reconciliation and come up with that figure. And it goes through a process, of course, but at the end of the day, it was a consensus that the 1.8 was in fact was available at that particular point. I think it was January 13th. But both staff from BBMR and DOA collaborated on it, and that's how that number came about. They
What
had
happened to
to
the other
do some
6 million?
reconciliation.
Vice Speaker, remember when I was talking about adjustments that we do perform at the end of the year? These are tax credits, alcohol and tobacco tax credits that were used to offset the Ledson landfill, the land for the Ledson landfill.
Yeah, and I see that in slide 14. Can you explain that to me?
Okay, what that is because the land for the Ledson landfill, the obligation was incurred by general fund. We need to recognize the expense, right, for the land for the Ledson landfill. But what happened is the tax credits were actually offset against the Healthy Future Fund, it being alcohol and tobacco. So in order to make, to account and make the general fund hold, we need to recognize the transfers based on the actual tax credits applied to for alcohol and tobacco for the same amount.
Can you cite and recite for me the code section that allows you to take Healthy Futures Fund? I mean, I even got put in my place by one of my colleagues last week by trying to appropriate $2.5 million to GDOE General Operations and remind it that the Healthy Futures Fund in its listed 15 things that you can use it for does not include GDOE operations, nor did I see any GDOE or any Ladzon transfer.
This was authorized when this body created the law authorizing taxpayers to offset their BPT. It wasn't clear that it was specifically to be used for general fund BPT. So this was based on, remember when this body granted?
I understand.
So that is our authorization to apply the tax credits.
And so then can you explain to me in the CRER for September, when all of a sudden, well, not CRER, I'm sorry, the special revenue tracking, special fund tracking report for September, there was a $12 million entry into Healthy Futures Fund. Do you recall
correct.
that?
Yes. That is the amount that was, that's the amount of the BPT revenues for alcohol and tobacco that was offset against the LEDs on tax credits. So that, again, is provided by Department of Revenue Tax at the end of the year so that we can record our adjustments. So again, our authority was the initial authorization to allow these landowners to offset
So,
their
but
taxes.
that wasn't all done in one day. The 12 million wasn't,
No, you're right.
it
It's
wasn't.
by month.
By month.
Yes.
But you don't report that to us monthly in the
No,
in
we
the
don't.
Healthy Futures Fund monthly
That's correct.
tracking.
That's correct. That's reported at the end of the fiscal year.
And so at the end of the year, when there's all of a sudden this
Spike.
paper transfer of $12 million into the into the Healthy Futures Fund,
Right.
was there a footnote there that said this was a transfer in from all the?
Okay.
I don't recall a footnote.
We will ensure next time we will put a footnote, but the reason why it shouldn't be, to me, because for budgetary purposes, we shouldn't recognize it as revenues, because when we do that, we're going to, BBMR is going to think that's available to be spent, when the reality is, no, it was already authorized through a tax offset to use it to pay for the leads on landfill, which is funded by general fund.
So this is Department of Administration's way of fulfilling Benita's promise to me last March, that when they take money, when people, though the statute I think made it very clear that there was that you could no longer use Healthy Futures Fund. I'll have to have my staff find that
Could you please?
statute that says you can't use it.
Okay.
Because
If you-
then it was
Then we
promised
can-
that it was going to be returned to the Healthy
Okay.
Futures Fund, because
I
as
see.
Senator Nicholas pointed out,
Oh,
when the money doesn't go into the Healthy Futures Fund, the hospital eats it.
Right,
They don't have the money, they don't have the cash to be able to operate.
Right. Well,
And I thought we had
Mm-hmm.
a specific provision that Healthy Futures Fund was not going to be used for anything else.
I see.
And
I see. Okay.
and so this $12 million that you put in on the revenue tracking, it made it look like there was money there. I mean, Senator Underwood and I introduced legislation immediately for $2.5 million, and you guys sent us a fiscal note, said that no, there's not 2.5 million, there's 1.8 that's available.
Well, yeah, that's the reason why I don't want to record it, because they might think it's available. But
So,
Joey did send me the report. There is a footnote by speaker
okay.
saying that September revenues for the Healthy Future Fund is inclusive of 8.7 million of tax credits. So it is noted.
So, but the entry was 12 million.
Okay. The entry, yeah, it's 8 million. Senator, are you talking about FY14 versus 15?
No.
Because- Yeah,
The special revenue tracking report at the end for September. Do you see that $12 million entry?
yeah.
And the $12 million entry says, oh, this $12 million that you entered, bringing the total collections to 23, showing that you have available 6 point something million. Is my memory still serving me right at my old age? Is that what that reading?
Yeah, it is 12 million, but that includes September receipts. So if you take the tax credit and deduct the 12 million, the difference is alcohol and tobacco BPT.
So for September, there was a $5 million, that they sold that many cigarettes and alcohol that month?
Senator, I didn't prepare for this one, so I can give you a schedule for that.
Yeah, I mean, because...
Okay, no problem. You can-
Because
Yeah,
to tell you the truth, I purposely introduced that legislation for $2.5 million
okay.
because I wanted to know how much was real cash.
I see. Understood.
And you guys
Yeah.
were willing to, well, one side of you was willing to acknowledge that there was 1.8 million, and you were hoping nobody would say that there was any cash there because there wasn't any cash. But I thought the two of you collaborated on that fiscal note.
No, it is 1.8. I did do the financial statements, but as far as the details, when we do the financial statements, we don't distinguish what tax credits from tax receipts. It's basically the bottom line. So based on the September 30th, 1.8 million was available, is available.
Based on the bottom line, read that note, read that entry for Healthy Futures Fund. The 12 million.
Yes, the 12 million are revenues.
I'm sorry, I don't have a copy in front of me. But
Okay.
that leaves, what's the next line read?
Which one? Are you talking about the footnote relating to the?
Well, not the footnote, just in my mind was burned the image of a $12 million transfer in. I wish I had a copy of my, a $12 million copy entry, and then it said total 23, right? Is there something there that says total 23? The month that it was entered, it showed that there was $6 million available. I'm hoping my OFP staff hears me and can run something. No, it runs horizontal. How are we supposed to divine how much cash there really is in any of these things when entries are made like that and I don't? What else should I know that you guys are doing with the Healthy Futures Fund?
Just a tax credit by speaker. And again, if you had, fortunately, there's only 4 million left, thank goodness, for worth of tax credits that are going to be applied this fiscal year. So this should almost disappear.
Can we go to 16? No, I'm sorry, 15. That was 15. But that shows a $10 million, not 8.7. So as of today, how much can we say is in the Healthy Futures Fund? Since the governor's not going to use the 1.1 million for the hospital.
That's 1.8 million, like I said earlier.
That's it?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. And can you explain to me how much was or should have been in the Healthy Futures Fund?
If we didn't have tax credits
Yeah.
applied, it would be the, so far, based on the latest report from DRT, we had to book 10.3 million worth of tax credit in FY15.
10.3? I thought it was 23.
Well, 20 out of the 23, 10.3 are tax credits. So the difference will be actual cash receipts.
But it would have been a total of 23 collected. 23
Yes.
in,
Yes.
yeah, for the
'Cause-
year, it would have been 23,
Right.
of which
If we
13
had
is cash.
received the cash,
And
yeah.
and 11 is tax credits.
10.4, yeah, that's correct. If we had received cash instead of tax offsets.
But if we go to 16, and I apologize, it's really small. Maybe if we
Can't
dim
see.
the lights again. Can somebody dim that light for me? I'm showing in the 3 fiscal years, actually, yeah, that a total of 25 million has been transferred out of the Healthy Futures Fund, or not transferred out, or not collected into the Healthy Futures Fund, or what would be the accounting term? Would it be an offset
Offsets, yeah,
for tax credits?
Correct.
In the amount of 16.6 and 8.5 for
That's-
Tizen.
yes, I can confirm those numbers, but yeah, it's pretty significant, but like I said, we fortunately only have 4 million left of that's on tax credits for this fiscal year.
And counting.
Well, yeah, hopefully that's it, that should be it,
That's because I guess the balance,
yeah.
the balance when we, as of September 30, 2015, when we looked at the report, it's showing about 4 million as of September 30, 2015. So we just gotta update our records to see maybe they exhausted it already for these last 3 months. October, November, December, we just have to update our records.
And that complete, is that just the interest, or is that interest plus principal?
That's interest plus principal. So, in other words, I think the total allowed, if I recall, including interest, was roughly close to 30 million, about 28 million, I believe.
Because that would have been a great retirement fund. 6%.
So once we retire that 4 million, we're going to have completely retired the Luzon obligation? No more Luzon obligation? Because I was under the impression that they were just claiming the credits on the interest alone and not on the principal. So we've actually we're almost at payoff.
Yes, but I believe, just to a note here, I think there was one landowner that I guess wanted the court to recompute the interest, base it on not simple, but on compounded daily, I believe. So I don't know if the court is gonna, allow that. So.
Okay. While we're trying to determine cash and authorization for transfers, can we go to 17? Danny, can we have the lights back on? Anyway, in the 2015 budget, the Guam legislature appropriated those sums to the retiree medical dental. How much was actually paid out in premiums?
This was for
The retirees' medical dental life insurance premium plan.
we're talking about this fiscal year or
Well, just the fiscal year that just ended.
FY15?
If we add all those numbers, that comes out to about 22 million, 14 from the general fund, 5 from the 2718 fund, and 2 million from the fund balance of section 2814 from the previous year.
$34 million.
You paid 34 million.
Yeah, I think, by Speaker, the legislature appropriated something like $23 million.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, appropriated $23 million for this particular item.
And
Is that the question you asked?
yes, and if show the
But the expenditure, I was just about to say, the expenditure level was hovering over $34 million.
okay.
That's how we tracked it.
Yes, that was the numbers
That you were
that
thinking.
I found.
Right.
Where did the additional 14 million come from?
I don't know.
What appropriation legislation authorized the additional 14 million?
Senator, although it's there were insufficient budget to pay for this, because it's an obligation, a legal obligation, we went ahead and paid the what was due and payable for the retirees' medical and dental and life.
So you paid out 34. I see that at the bottom.
Yes.
And
We had to pay.
you both did not acknowledge that 34 million has been paid out.
Yeah, a little bit over. I wasn't prepared for that number, but I remembered 34 million.
Well, yeah, it's 1.3
Okay.
per pay period times 24 pay periods, which comes out to the 1.3.
Okay.
I mean, to the 34. But what's more intriguing to me is where you entered those amounts at. How much is in the section 2718? I thought most of you laughed at me the first time I said there was going to be 7 million going into the 2718. Now there's 20-some million dollars going into the 2718 fund? There is no way, is there,
There's
Ms.
no
Kiki?
20 million, yeah,
There is no $20 million in there.
that's correct.
But the expenditure is being charged or booked in the 2418, in the 2718 account fund. Why isn't it recorded under the general fund?
It is, sir. It's one of the transactions you're questioning me about.
Yes.
I did book it, and so we're jumping ahead. But yes, I did record it as a transfers out to section 2718. It is recognized as a general fund expenditure.
It's recognized as a general fund expense?
Yes, as a transfer out. Again, GASB requires us to, if a special fund, and I know this was Senator Sinicus was talking about, if there should be a special fund that's in a shortfall, Of course, general fund being the primary fund will have to record the transfers out to cover that shortfall, especially if the fund, special fund would not be in a position to pay back general fund. So that's the accounting rules.
But when was the transfer in?
When did I record that? I bet you have that. It's part of your request.
Yes, it was on November the 23rd, after the fiscal year.
Yes, I give it the benefit of the opportunity that we're going to receive.
You can show the next.
And again,
19.
Vice Speaker, last year we did receive some funds from Select Care on January, I believe. January. So, I'm not saying that we're not going to, there's still a possibility that we might get some funds.
But was there ever $20 million in there?
There's no. Well, I was being an accountant, I was conservative in recording it, but like I said, there's a possibility the insurance company will pay us, and then I'll go ahead and reduce the transfer out.
Is there an effort to, is this an effort to have a special fund show a deficit and not have the general fund show a deficit?
That's against our GASB. No, we need to make the fund whole, the special fund whole. Especially, like I said, if the special fund would not be in a position to pay, of course we need to record the transfers out.
That's a substantial amount that the 2718 account did not have, that you guys were. How could anything be paid? It's negative 13.
Okay. I'm sorry, sir. What's the question?
How could you write any checks out of that account to any insurance company when you had nothing in that account?
Sir, like I said, we have a legal obligation to pay.
I understand that you have a
For the
legal obligation,
retirees.
but why is it out of the 2718 account? And why did we run it for June, July, August, September, October?
Well, the primary funding source is general fund. Until the 14 million was exhausted, then we would charge the Section 2718 fund, it being the secondary funding source. So we charge that fund until the fiscal year is ended. And then we look at the bottom line of the fund. We look at the financial position, and then we determine how much we need to record as a transfers out from general fund.
But if you look at that, the legislature appropriated 14 from the general fund
That's correct.
and 8 million from the special fund.
Right.
Shouldn't all of those, after you spent the 8 million, shouldn't those have all been entered as expenses up on top in the general fund and not in the special fund?
Well, yeah, you can say that too, but it's at the end of the day, it all gets recorded in the right fund. So like,
Which is the reason why I'm asking whether or not we're trying to hide a shortfall in a special fund rather than admit the shortfall in the general fund.
I don't think that's the situation. If you look at the transaction, we did expense general fund for 20 million. And like you asked about
And that's
the
what I'm
nature
saying.
of the transaction. Yeah, but by the time the audit reports are issued, though, they will reclassify it again as a separate item under retirees' health insurance
You can be sure I'm going to be looking to see whether or not that 20...
for the whole 34 million.
Yes, the 34 million is going to
Yeah.
come from the general fund, or at least most of it is coming from the general
Since
fund.
primarily it's funded
Yeah.
by general fund, yes.
Because I'm a little concerned that it's going to be hidden in there.
No, it's not, sir.
And, go ahead.
I just really need to follow up on this information because it's a little alarming. So for the health insurance for retirees, we appropriated 22 million, but the total expense came out to about 35 million. And so to make up for that shortfall, you took from the general fund, you moved it into section 2718, and you expensed it out of there so that it can, I guess, be recorded out of the 2718 fund. But the remaining question is, how did you sign up for a legal obligation? How did this government sign up for a legal obligation of 35 million when it was only appropriated $22 million for that obligation? Who signed a contract for $35 million when there was only $22 million to expense?
That's a good question, Senator. When I guess I know there's a committee, right, that is overseeing the RFP process, and then who eventually is responsible for the contract. But yes, that is a good point. They should have known that. And even this year, FYI, please review what the appropriation and versus what we're tracking, because you might anticipate the same thing. FYI, so.
But see, this
Yeah.
error wasn't even an appropriation and tracking error. What was appropriated was 22 million. What was expensed was 34. So it wasn't that we came up short on a projection. Somebody spent way more than what was appropriated. I mean, that's like us saying we're going to go and build a school for 100 million,
Well-
and someone goes out and builds a $150 million school, and then we just transfer $50 million to pay it off because, we had a legal obligation to pay the contractor.
Yeah.
But how do you spend
Right now,
how do you spend $12 million more than what you appropriated?
the contract is
contractually?
very straightforward. Whatever the rates are, the retiree rates, and just multiply it by the actual retirees. Because when we get invoice, retirement fund does give us a detailed listing of all the retirees, and then just multiply it by the rates, the retiree rates, which is, to me, is quite significant. So, because we do our due diligence, we review the invoices before we pay.
What this
So-
goes back down to me, though, is that in order for us to come up to that $22 million expected cost, somebody had to have bid on a price tag that added up to that in order for us to appropriate at that level. Which means that when we were evaluating the
Yeah.
competing bids for the insurance services, somebody bidded 22 million, and that's what we costed out on the appropriation. They turned around and then they charged us 35 million, and we went ahead and paid it, which means that their bid should have been 35 million.
By all due respect,
And if their bid was 35
Senator,
million, then maybe their bid was not the lowest bid. And so I'm just worried that we're having these service providers bidding low, us contractually obligating to them, and then their overall cost is actually coming in much higher. And so we have multiple problems here. We have expenditures that are above what's appropriated. We have contracts that are in excess of what we've authorized. And then we potentially have bids that are being awarded that are much lower than what the actuals are coming out to by design.
Okay,
I mean, that's a lot of red flags.
No,
to
by
jump
my
out at me.
understanding, Senator, is we do have representation also from the legislature. So I'm not sure who that was, but that's one way of your office being, updated of what's going on.
And where do we draw the line exactly of this practice? I mean, okay, so we have people who are in procurement and they procure a contract to go out and build a culvert or whatever to mitigate flooding, and we do it for 100 million and it comes out to 200 million. We're just going to go ahead and transfer general fund to pay off the 200 without an appropriation because it was contractually obligated. This is really alarming. This is really, really alarming.
Okay.
And please correct me if I'm wrong in saying that. But basically, what I'm observing here is, in a competitive bid process, a bid came in at 22 million. We accepted that bid. It ended up costing 35. We paid it without an additional appropriation, and we're just going to go ahead and continue on with business as usual as if that was okay.
I think also, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think it depends on when the budget was approved versus when the contract was signed. So we can look into that as well. I'm just,
But
yeah.
even if that was the case, I mean, we've even gone to the bond market and had to have last-minute sessions called in because the interest rate was too high or too low. I mean, even if we're having
Yeah.
budgets that are passed in October and contracts that aren't signed till November or December, if the contract is in excess of the appropriation, we got to come back into special session. We got to make an appropriation to match the actual contractual amount. How are we contractually obligating ourselves for a lot more than what we're appropriating? And then how are those contractual obligations that are higher than the appropriations getting legally paid out?
I understand your
You know, that's like the
concerns,
museum
yeah.
people coming back to us saying that it's going to cost $50 million more and somebody just writing a check. How do we do that? I really don't understand how that can even be legal, operatively. And please somebody please explain it to me how it works if I'm ignorant or wrong or naive. But we just wrote some company a $12 million check that they didn't have any legal authorization to write.
I would defer this, my director, he's on medical leave now, right now. So as soon as he comes back, I will bring it up to his attention.
Okay, thank you.
As long as we're talking about medical leave in the hospital, let's go to 21. The news over the last several months has been the need for cash at GMH. I believe this is a screenshot of the quarterly allotment. Is that correct? Turn the lights down so they can see.
So we're in first, we just finished first quarter.
Turn your mic on.
Yes. This is this year's budget, yeah, I can see.
Yeah, the legislature appropriated a total of yes, and on top of everything that was going for the pharmaceutical funds and other funds. Of the amount that has been appropriated to GMH, of that $5,357,283 appropriated, do I understand that you guys have allotted or approved 1 million to be released? How do you read that? Can somebody read that to me?
Are you talking about the Healthy Futures Fund
No,
operation?
that goes to the, well, all of them.
All of them?
Yeah, what do all those numbers mean?
Basically, those are all the funding sources to pay GMHA.
And it says that the appropriation, one appropriation is $5,367,000, and the year-to-date allotment is $1,008,000.
Mm-hmm.
Has the hospital received $1,008,000 from that account?
Yes, sir.
It
Yes, yes.
did. When was that released?
Well, I don't have it in the top of my head, sir, but we have paid them everything we owed. In fact, plus more. Yes, we pay them whatever is being requested from the hospital because part of our requirements is they submit a request. So yes, everything has been paid.
So if I was to call the hospital, I'd find out from that first account that they should have already received 1.8. From the second
Right.
appropriation of $1 million, they should have received 340. And from the last one, that they should have received 1.2 million. So they should have already received $3.5 million.
I don't recall. We didn't prepare for an outstanding payment status for the hospital, but I know they're always our priority every week, every day. So
I
yeah.
understand. And so one of the things that Senator Rodriguez has been moving for and wanting a lot of the 20, I think this year we appropriated about $21 million to assist the hospital.
Right.
And a good portion of that, except for this direct one, is to Public Health and Social Services to pay for the 3 Ms. What is the current status of payments of the 3 Ms out of DOA from all of the billings?
You're talking about Medicaid and MIP?
Yes.
So what's the third M?
Medicare, Medicaid.
Okay, yeah, we pay for, okay. I know that we have a cash flow that we prepare, and I know that with regards to Medicaid, we should pay 1/12 of the budget every month, but we're ahead of that. And that's mainly because we want to give the hospital their monies. So, again, we didn't prepare that report.
But
we
why
could.
are you making it 1/12 of the amount?
No, what I'm saying is I know that we are paying we're paying GMH as a priority through the Medicaid account.
And how about the
And
MIP account?
yes. So whatever.
And so if
yeah.
I was to ask you to provide me a report day after tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
providing me a statement as to how much Public Health and Social Services has billed,
Sure, yes,
sent to the to Department of Administration for payment,
yes. We can do
that-
that. Uh-huh.
that you will be able to send me a report that says that everything that Public Health and Social Services has deemed, approved, and should be paid for has been paid?
We can't say everything's paid, but what we can say is what was paid to the hospital, and the report will show that the hospital has always been a priority.
Yeah,
So
I understand. But-
we'll give you a report.
What I want from you is, I want a report from the beginning of this fiscal year
Okay.
for all the 3M billings that
Right.
Public Health and Social Services approved. Because if I understand the system, GMH sends the bills up to Public Health.
Right.
Public Health reviews it and says,
Right.
interesting, you billed us for $5 million. We've
Right.
gone through and we only think that we're going to pay 3.3.
Okay.
So they prepare the 3.3 and they send it down to DOA,
Correct.
and DOA can and should cut a check for 3.3.
Right. That's correct.
How current are you with the what Public Health has been sending you is due and payable to Public Health, to GMH from the 3 Ms?
Okay, I can also provide you that report.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you be able to say that you're current?
For Medicaid, by part of the federal requirements is we do have to pay timely, so that we do pay within 45 days. MIP, that's 100% general fund, but when it comes to GMH, we will make that a priority over other providers. So that one is, because it's funded by general fund, again, that is contingent upon cash receipts.
And current, you brought up
Yeah.
the word. I've been staying away from it all day afternoon. But you've now broken that silence. What's the current cash situation?
Are we talking about income tax efficiency fund now? Okay, while we're discussing this, can it cover the income tax efficiency set aside? Because I know that's Senator Siniclis' primary concern, one of his concerns. All right, let me begin by our cash disbursements for beginning with October of this year. As you know, there's some obligations that are required to be paid in lump sums. So COLA, we paid 13 million. We had to come up with 13 million. I believe that was paid on October. And then we had to pay the JFK debt of 5.1 million, although it's funded by, I'm sorry, the JFK debt is funded by general fund. Where I was leading to was the TZEN debt, thank you. That is funded by Territorial Education Fund, which you know is real property tax. And real property tax is not actually due until February. So because we had to pay all these debts, irregardless of what the funding source, because you know we don't want to default in our bonds, in our debt, that I believe that comes up to around 25 million. So that's large amounts of monies that we had to come up in addition to our non-discretionary obligations which we need to pay out, which is our bond payments, our GOBs, our BPTs, DOE, our payroll, legislature, nonprofit. I can go on and on. So because we still need to make those payments, plus pay these single one-time payments, it's really, we are really in a cash crunch right now. It doesn't enable us to put the required set aside for income tax refunds that is cited by law. Of course, as the year progresses and then we get those revenues, real property tax, and then we have April where we have a peak, the large amounts of income tax due, then we can pretty much level off and catch up with tax refunds. So basically that's our cash position right now for this year.
You used a very interesting two words together,
What's that?
cash crunch.
Okay, a
Can you
cash.
describe that to me and explain what you mean by we're currently in a cash crunch?
Well, I'm just saying it's temporary because of the timing of our obligations that are due. Like I said, COLA, because the law says we have to pay lump sum. Otherwise, if you allowed us to pay it during 12 months, then we wouldn't be, having these cash challenges. But of course, our debt, we have to pay the whole amount on the due date. So that included, again, like I said, JFK, the TZ.
No, I understand that, but
Plus
what is the payday's this Friday?
Yes, sir.
How are we?
We are fine for payroll. What I'm saying is, as far as like tax refund, which I know the senators.
Our payroll on this end, or would Am I going to get calls from DOE on Friday that,
No, and I just paid your office, so you're fine too.
no, I'm not worried about me. I'm worried
Okay.
about GDOE.
Oh, no, they're fine. Yeah,
Keep getting calls on payday going, we can't,
they calling
for
you?
some reason, they're not getting having to wait to get their check at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something. Is that going to be a problem this Friday?
No, but at the same time, I kind of blame them because I don't know why they went over direct deposit. They should just get checks because that requires us to pay them earlier, earlier than needed. But I'm just joking. It's fine. It's more efficient. But yeah, that's why they're complaining probably.
Kathy, thank you for touching on the income tax refund trust account. For me, I always try and show year-over-year improvement. We had a real tough time last year in terms of getting those things out on a regular basis.
Yes.
I never want to take away from what the governor accomplished. We did catch up, and that was a good thing in terms of the years of backlog. But taking us now to the next goal of eventually being able to pay out these things similar to what the federal government does within 30 days, we're a long ways off from that. So I want to at least be able to show our people that we're making incremental improvement towards reaching a goal like that. How do we fare this year as compared to last year in terms of the rate at which we'll be able to pay out income tax refunds? Because I know that it took us a while to get to up even just to February 13th, and then it just stopped all the way until the first week of September. So what can we expect? What can our people reasonably expect in terms of a payout schedule, and how are we in terms of the balances in the income tax refund trust account as compared to last year? Do we have more in there this year than last? Do we have less? Why? And what's that schedule going to be in terms of payouts going forward? And again, as the Vice Speaker alluded to earlier, I did introduce a bill for us to say, you know what? Any extra cash, as in actual cash, floating around out there should first go for refunds, vendor payments, or declared emergencies. That way we can begin getting all the money out to where it's supposed to go in terms of our current obligations. So can you answer at least those first several questions? Where is the income tax refund trust account this year versus last year?
Okay.
And what kind of a schedule can our people expect to have their refunds paid out this year versus last year? Can we see, are we going to anticipate something more accelerated? Are we looking at the exact same thing all over again? Where are we at on those two areas?
Okay, I can work on a schedule. I need to include that and do our comprehensive cash flow because we're talking about not just general fund, but all, including special funds, only because of, again, the timing, depending on what debt is due from the special fund and whether or not general fund has to advance its receipts. So I guess the bottom line is I'll work on it. And just give me, is next week Monday too long?
No, I know it's going to take a lot of work to crunch that. And I want something as accurate as possible.
100 special revenue funds that we need to plot out. Okay.
Right. But also on the income tax refund trust account, though, where are we year over year in terms of the deposits in there? Are we at the same level? Are we higher or are we lower in terms of the balances in that trust account?
Yeah.
Because really, that's a clearing account for all these refunds.
Yes.
If we're lower than we were last year, that's already something for us to be really concerned about.
Yeah, I am happy to say that we are complying. We are paying all the refunds that are outstanding, right? We have, based on what was filed.
We're up to September 30. So we only have a couple of months, which represents a small portion, which is about $2.3 million, all the way up to December.
Okay.
That's the balance that we're looking at.
Well, that's what's outstanding payable for last year's tax refunds.
Yes.
So really, there's no money in the income tax refund trust account. We're waiting for $2.3 million just to catch up to last tax year.
We're hoping we can with payroll this week. We're hoping that we can pay it out by next week.
And that will just make us current from last tax season.
Yes.
So really, we have no money in the income tax refund trust account banked for this upcoming tax year. That's pretty much what it is, right? I mean, let's just be upfront. So people are getting their W-2s. They're probably filing already. And the reality is that there's the income tax refund trust account has a negative balance to last year. We're still 2.3 million. We're still waiting to pay off 2.3 million from last year.
Isn't there supposed to be a statutory percentage that's put into the?
I guess what Kathy is saying, the crunch time, crunch money, I guess they're using it for others, and I guess they're gonna make up, I guess, moving forward. And so far, I think my last report is we received about 400 to 500 returns this year, so it's kind of slow this year, but it's gonna pick up because the mandatory issuing of the W-2 is January 31st, so people are gonna be getting their W-2s, and they'll be probably filing a lot next week and for the month of February.
And just to like kind of put into perspective, so you were saying that you had to pay the Tidzin with that was supposed to come out of TEF money, that would have come in. That's not coming in until February, so you had to advance that. And so when that TEF money comes in February, you're going to credit that back to the income tax refund trust account, for example.
That will go back to general fund.
Yeah. So but you still have that shortfall in the income tax refund trust account, so you do need to eventually start crediting that back. Is the Tidzin lease, that's a bond? I don't recall us going to the bond market for the Tidzin lease. I remember it was a tax credit agreement that was somehow converted into a cash agreement, but I don't think it's an actual bond payment.
Senator, it's an annual lease.
It's an annual lease.
Yeah,
and so
not a bond,
it's an annual lease between the lessor and the lessee, which is the government of Guam and whoever is providing the facility.
That's correct.
Can you guys go back and renegotiate that lease somehow to have them amortize the payments over a 12-month period, so that we're not sucking $5 million out at one particular point in the fiscal year? You know, because if anything that involves cash management, we need to really work on reamortizing everything out over a 12-month pay schedule. You know, these instances where we're sucking money out at certain points, it just exacerbates slow cash flow periods. So can you go back also and look at everything else that has like these big chunky obligations that we pay out, and try and see if we can renegotiate 12-month payment schedules, you know, on a amortized basis. To kind of,
that's a good point.
Perhaps, you know, perhaps we can even talk to our retirees through the retirement fund, because maybe they wouldn't mind getting a 12-month check.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to $2,000 in 1 month. You know, you get $100-some every month, but it smooths out our cash flow issues. You know,
that's a good point, Senator.
And we can start that October 1 of the fiscal year. So maybe they don't get $2,000 in November, but they'll get 180 October, November, December going forward. I mean, these are the kind of things, and we just need to be upfront of our people and have very clear dialogues with them and explain them, look, we're not taking anything away. We're just asking, can we pay you out over a 12-month period? It really helps us with our cash flow. It'll help us to make sure that we have money for your tax refund, because you and your kids are waiting for that too. So let's have these conversations, you know. All these big chunk obligations, let's try and reamortize them or get them onto a 12-month schedule. Anything that we can negotiate. I think that will be something very proactive for us to be able to do to address our cash flow issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, but before I turn that back over, I just want to make it very clear. Let's get that money into that income tax refund trust account. You know, I mean, the reason why I introduced that bill is so that, you know, cash no longer becomes the, you know, the goat that we always kick as to why we're not paying these things out fast enough. And then because it's statutorily required, you know, that we make those deposits into those accounts, you know, this just further underscores the need for us to restore the confidence of our people in the laws that we have on the books. You know, because the whole point of that law is for us to have the money in the bank to be able to pay out the refunds when the returns get filed. And if we're just not putting the money in the account, we're never going to be able to pay out the tax returns. And that's why we got to really watch out on how we spend and how we appropriate, because in the end, when it comes down to cash, and we already have these obligations on the books, we got to make good on them on a timely basis. We really do. everything else, all other things need to come second to what we've already committed to. Because there's no point in adding obligation on top of obligation on top of obligation when we're not already meeting what we've already committed to. So, Kathy, can the agency just keep me abreast on a regular basis of that trust fund, and give me a call the day after every single deposit's made, And John, if you guys can beef up the collections as much as possible and get it in there, because we're gonna have a very delicate balancing act between processing the filings and getting the payments out in time. And what I want to be able to show to our people is, look, we're getting better. Every year we're at least getting a little bit more better. We're working towards a specific goal. I want to be able to say that. I don't want us to come back and have the exact same outcome as last year or worse. Let's at least show some kind of measurable improvement, and then everybody will have confidence that we're going to eventually get to that ultimate goal of paying out refunds within 30 days. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
As long as we're talking about tax refunds, did I hear on the radio the other day that Revenue Tax does not have the tax forms for?
Usually we get them at the end of the month, Vice Speaker. We have the W-2s ready, but those forms that come from the IRS, the booklets, they normally come in, at the end of the month or first week of February. But the option is that, if you really need, you can actually go online to the IRS website, and you can download those forms if you really want to. And a lot of them that have the software, the preparers out there are already doing it, preparing for their clients. So it started, filing has started, and I think even IRS delayed. They won't accept any returns until like January 22nd, I believe, or last week of the month of January. So we just accept them because a lot of them have the software to actually prepare those returns and submit it.
Okay. Let's go back to slide 11. I just thought I'd in this current fiscal year's budget, the legislature gave a lump sum budget to the administration, and we authorized all of you to ask for an allotment or an allocation report from everybody. Do I understand, did everybody submit their proposed allocation of their lump sum appropriation? Yes.
Yeah, the allocation report we did submit and complied with the statute that's in the Budget Act.
Okay, and the Budget Act also has a provision that allows for transfers, but requires a report within 5 days of any transfer between accounts and between departments. I've not seen any reports of transfers. Am I to assume that there has been no transfers done in the last 3 months?
Yeah, that's correct, Vice Speaker. That Section 9 of Chapter 13 under Administrative Provisions talks about the General Fund Transfer Authority of Imagalan, Guahan, allowing him to do a 15% transfer authority between General Fund branch appropriations. So yes, as of this particular point in time, there has not been a governor's transfer per this statute.
Okay, well that's good.
But
to
if
hear.
but if it happens, we will submit.
As we're talking about I'm going to discuss a very indelicate subject at this time. Can somebody explain to me how the paper reimbursement was made last month, Kathy? The reimbursement at the governor's office.
Oh, you're talking about the
The retro pay reimbursement.
Oh, for this year? Okay. Hold on.
Okay, let's just cut to the chase. I don't know if you have. Do you have the screenshot for that one?
Oh, okay. You're talking about the transaction?
Yeah. How?
Yeah.
Can you read that all those letters and translate that into English for me? The RCD on class hires retro payments as RCVBLs. Can you
well,
say that in English?
Since it was the payments were due to be since the AG issued her opinion on this, or so-called opinion, we decided, the accounting, myself decided that we'll go ahead and recognize it as an accounts receivable. So we wanted to make sure that we reverse those charges, those accounts that were initially charged for the compensation. So this transaction is recognizing the AR from the employees, meaning to say they have to pay it back, and then we reverse the charges.
Did you have to create a special account within the governor's office? I mean, I don't know of anything that the governor's office would have for accounts receivable. They have an accounts receivable account.
No, it's just a general ledger account. We do have AR for all kinds of accounts, and this one will probably be under AR employees. So you don't need an appropriation to record the receivables. I'm sorry.
And how often does a governor's office have receivables?
Oh, no.
From what?
This is one time. This is an anomaly transaction.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
This is not a recurring transaction.
Okay. I just couldn't figure out
Okay.
as receivables.
AR, yeah.
That didn't
Okay.
compute or translate in my poor little brain.
Okay.
Anybody have any other questions? Anybody? Go ahead. I just need to. Go ahead. Any subject.
I kind of wanted to discuss also, Kathy, the current vendor payables that we have on the agenda. Can you go ahead and give us an overview of what the payables look like right now as far as our vendors?
Okay.
Particularly the number of vendors and the amounts owed that are past due, and then 30 days past due.
Okay.
More than 30 days past due. More
Right.
than 60. More than 90.
Yes, we can. We did prepare the report, but just so you know, it's a temporary. We are running over 90 days, but this is just temporary because of the large payments that we had to make. We will catch up and below.
I totally understand. I don't need to
But
preface.
yeah, I can
just
give
need
you
to
the
know that
report.
counts.
Yeah, just so you know on the record.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, if you can just let me know. For the record, just read it into the...
Oh, I see.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Forgive me, I got a lot of reports here. Oh, okay, I have it. It's okay. All right, the way we age is we grouped it by funds, general fund being by itself, So this report was ran as of today. So right now, if we look at general fund only, what we have, what is due and payable is 25.2 million, of which 3.7 million is over 90 days. We try to stay below 90 days. That's our average. But again, just a temporary setback as a result of the large lump sum payments that we made earlier in the year. So for general fund is 25.2 million. And again, that might seem substantial, but we do incur around $800 million of expenditure a year for general fund. So if you break it down by month, then it's manageable. And then for the other funds, we owe 21 million.
On the general fund one, we have 25.2 payable. How much of that is more than 30 days, or within 30 days?
Within 30 days, we're looking at 13.3 million.
Okay, and then more than 30 days?
The difference around 22 million.
22 million is more than
Yeah.
30 days, and
Yeah.
then more than 60 days?
I'm sorry. If you're going to break it down, between 30 and 60 is 4.6 million. Over 60 to 90 will be 3.5, and then over 90 days will be 3.6 million.
3.6, and then less than 30 is the balance.
Yes,
And how much is that?
13.3 million.
So 0 to 30 is 13.3.
You're right.
30
Yeah.
to 60 is 4.6, 60 to 90 is 3.5,
Correct.
and 90 is 3.6.
Yeah.
And that's general fund vendor obligation.
Yes.
Okay.
General
Do we
fund
have
only.
anything that's plus 90?
Plus 90 meaning over 90?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 3.6
That's a
million.
3.6.
Yeah.
Do you have like the oldest on that 3.6? Like how old is the oldest of that? You don't have it handy?
No, unfortunately I didn't break it down after
Okay, that's
that.
fine. That's fine.
But
Thank you.
yeah.
So that's general fund.
Yes.
Go ahead and continue.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So next we have. What do you have
Okay.
next on your?
Oh, I'm sorry. And then we have the other funds. They're about the same amount, 25 million.
These are special funds.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
but do you have them broken down by special fund? Because some special fund issues are extremely critical, and others are they're all critical, but some are
Right.
in crisis mode.
Right. But the bulk of it is less than 30 days out of the 25. It could be maybe we're looking at, like the federal highway projects, federal grants. Those are big amounts. So less than 30 days is about 15, 16, 17 million.
So 0 to 30, 17 million.
Yeah, out of the 25.
Okay.
Correct. So they're in a better position.
And then 30
Yeah.
to 60 is
2.5 plus 1.9.
2.5 plus 1.9.
Yeah.
4.4.
Yes. And then 60 to 90 is 1.4 million.
1.4.
And then 90 to 120 is 1.9 million.
1.9.
Or rather, yeah,
Now these are special fund
correct.
vendor payables.
Yes.
So how do we understand what the payable situation is, for example, with GMH?
Well, GMH is the beneficiary of, like, all across.
Right. So how
Yeah.
do we?
So, like I said, I promise an outstanding status, and we'll break it down by not only by fund, but we'll detail the appropriation accounts for you for GMH.
Can we get something by agency also?
Yes, of
You know?
course.
I mean,
yeah.
because when you look at this, right, you
Yeah.
step back and say, okay, well, it might not be so bad,
Right.
but if the bulk of these late vendor payments are in a particular category, and then we can track it back to that particular category getting impacted by multiple variables. So, for example, if the GMH is particularly behind on their vendor
Okay.
payments, and we see that BPT's having issues in collections. We're over-projecting on the BPT. They're getting eaten up by a lot of tax credits. You know, it gets very difficult for us to draw clean lines between what's impacting the bottom line and how that's translating into vendors getting delayed. So I think we need to be drawing much more cleaner lines so that we can understand how our policy decisions are really impacting not only the cash flow, but the ability for us to, you know, make these payments. Because also, you know, not every vendor issue is the same. I mean, you know, cutting the power off at the hospital is a huge deal, you know, versus, you know, not paying for a vendor who didn't, you know, who we bought, you know, orange cones from for DPW, for example. So if we can get them broken down by agency, I think that'll really help us out. And then just you know, so on the federal grant vendor payments, how quickly do we pay those? Are those all within 30 days? A lot of them?
Well, we have to comply with the Cash Management Initiative Act, which is our federal requirement. Where our turnaround time varies depending on the funding source. So, like I said, that's probably why the other funds are less than 30. Those are primarily federal grants.
So when the federal government requires us to pay within 30 days, we comply.
Oh yes, we have to.
And I guess I bring that up because, you know, it proves that we have the capacity to comply when we make the commitment if the feds are watching.
Yes.
Why don't we have the same capacity to comply when we just make the commitment? You know, why do we have all these other vendors who don't have that federal? I mean, you know, we always talk about self-determination and all these kind of things, and it's like, well, if we ever want to get there, we got to act like it, you know. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that we can pay within 30 days if the federal government is compelling us to. You know, and if we ever want to get to a place where we can have those kind of discussions, we need to be moving ourselves toward that standard. So just as I want us to be able to track the income tax refund trust account and show incremental progress towards us getting to paying refunds within 30 days, year over year, can we start doing that too with all of our payables here to vendors? So for example, let's say that, you know, we have 25 million in payables in the general fund. And year over year, you know, this fiscal year is 3.6 million. That's more than 90. Next fiscal year, can we work all these numbers down till everything eventually gets to 30 days or less? You know, and push ourselves into a commitment where everything is less than 30 days.
And then, like your excellent recommendation, if you can pretty much level out all those lump sum payments, this will be much better.
You know, and there's all kinds of different solutions that we can come up with here, but it all boils back down to us understanding what the standard should be and making a commitment towards incremental progress towards that. So
I agree.
If I guess for historical basis, if we can go back and do a look back year over year over the last 5 years to show what our historical vendor payment schedule has been. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have no illusion it's not going to look pretty, you know, but the intent is to give us a baseline so that as we go forward, we can say, you know what, we're getting better and we're getting better and we're getting better. And then come up with a plan for us to be able to make sure that eventually tax refunds are paid within 30 days and vendors are paid within 30 days. So if you can get a 5-year look back on this, maybe a year over year, I don't know what would be a better schedule for you, maybe a January to January, seeing how you recon a fiscal year over the 3 months after. That might be better. But get us a 5-year look back and then give us a current year snapshot. And then from there, we can come in every January and say, where are we in terms of these payables? How do we compare to last year, and how are we projecting to track for the future? You know, I want us to be able to illustrate to our people, you know, put out good news for a change and illustrate to them that our payable situation is 10% better this year than it was last year. You know, So
performance
can I ask
measures.
You for that?
I know what you're talking about.
Thank you. So broken down by vendor. I'm sorry, broken down by agency, and then 5-year look back, and then give us a baseline snapshot so we can start building on that. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Again, any questions from anybody? It's almost 4:30. I want to thank the three of you for coming today. And again, Mr. Calvo, I want to commend you and your staff for some excellent work that's done. Just make sure that when you guys make your tracking projections, that somebody doesn't override you and your tracking and make some outrageous requests in the executive budget that you guys know is impossible. It'll make life easier for you, and it'll make life easier for me, because then your allotments you don't have to try to deal with unreasonable allotments. And I know, though there was much criticism about the budget that the legislature was able to pass and stick behind, and I want to thank my colleagues for standing with me, it's also helped administration in the release of funds, in that it's not outrageous numbers that they're having to deal with. And I'm happy to hear that you've not heard any recent discussion of a supplemental. And the reason why I wanted to have this hearing at this time and was not willing to have a continuation or a postponement is I wanted us to discuss the real numbers and come to a realization that a supplemental is inappropriate at this time, let's say, unfounded. That, we barely made, even with your bottom line adjustments, we cleared 260,000 over our reduced revenue projection. And please, when the budget is submitted next week, have some reasonable numbers for us, and make sure that you realize that the law requires that there be a 2% set aside if there is a continuing deficit. And though none of you can say that there has been a surplus or a deficit for the last fiscal year, though the governor has said that there is, and he said it may be small, but whatever, it's not going to wipe out the 60 million that's there. I think even your projection was that you're hoping to get it from the 60 to the 40 to the 25 to 0 by 18. So, it's very commendable. Please make sure we set aside the 2% for the budget, the deficit reduction. And let's try to have something reasonable that we can look at and you guys can work with, because it makes life difficult for all of us. I get blamed for stealing 20 million or denying somebody 20 million, and all of a sudden I become the daddy that wouldn't is saying no to Disneyland when there was no money to go to Disneyland. Ask your father; he's the one that's saying you can't go, and he's the bad guy. Let's be realistic, so you don't have to face that request to go to Disneyland when we can barely make it to the next paycheck. And and it makes it easier for administration for the releases, because I cannot. I commend her and her staff for the pressure that they must be under. You can at least point, like you did at the last hearing. I released the allotment. It's her. So she and her department have a really difficult time having to deal with the numbers. Let's make it easier for both of you, and if we can get our friend on the other end of the table to be as aggressive as possible in collections and the receivables that he's talking about, maybe all of our lives would be so much better and easier, and we can go to Disneyland and buy all the cars that everybody wants and everything else. But until we do, please be reasonable in your request that you send us next month, because one of us is going to have to play bad daddy, you know, won't take me to Disneyland. I hate you, you know. Let's just make it so that we all work together to try to do something. And thank you very much, and I commend and thank your staff for all the excellent work that they do. Okay? This committee stands adjourned.